Let's be honest, Hollywood gives us a pretty dramatic version of the postmortem exam. But what really goes on behind those closed doors? Well, let's pull back the curtain and get into the actual science. A full internal examination is this incredibly thorough investigation of the body's three main spaces: the chest, the abdomen, and of course the skull. For this explainer, we're really going to zero in on the most delicate and complex part of that whole process, the cranial examination, so we can understand the meticulous steps these experts take to unlock the secrets held within the brain.
You know, it really all boils down to this one question, doesn't it? This isn't just some routine procedure. It's a journey of discovery. It's a systematic investigation to find answers that are literally written in our own anatomy. So let's follow the exact path these experts take to read that story.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the basic principles that guide the whole thing. Then we'll get into how the examination is actually opened up. After that, we'll explore the incredible precision it takes to get inside the skull, see what they check for in there, and finally, we'll dive into the detailed analysis of the brain itself. It's a clear path from start to finish.
Okay, so the first thing you have to understand is that this is not a rigid one-size-fits-all formula. Not at all. While the process is always systematic, it also has to be flexible. It adapts to the unique circumstances of every single case to answer the specific questions they're trying to solve.
So, here's the golden rule. The dissector starts where the main problem is suspected to be. Makes sense, right? If there's a serious head injury, they might start with the skull. But, and this is super important, no matter where they begin, all three major cavities, the skull, the chest, and the abdomen, absolutely have to be opened and examined. You can't risk missing anything.
So let's move on to the first major action. You'll see how this all builds. Opening the body's trunk isn't just a random cut. The choice of incision is totally deliberate, and it's carefully selected based on the goals of the examination, and sometimes based on what needs to happen to the body after the exam is all done. To get into the chest and abdominal cavities, examiners basically choose from one of these three primary methods: the I-shaped, the modified Y-shaped, and the full Y-shaped incision. And trust me, the shape isn't arbitrary. Each one is picked for a very specific reason.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, because this breaks down the why. The I-shaped incision, that's the straightforward workhorse. It's for routine cases, simple and convenient. The modified Y-shaped incision is chosen when cosmetic restoration is a priority, especially for women, because the incisions can be curved right under the breasts. And the full Y-shaped, the one that extends all the way up behind the ears, that's essential when a really detailed investigation of the neck organs is the #1 priority.
All right, let's shift our focus now to the head. Getting to the brain is, well, it's arguably the most delicate part of the entire procedure. It demands an incredible amount of precision to protect the very structures that might just hold the most important clues.
The first step is a single incision across the scalp, running from behind one ear over the crown of the head to the other. This lets the examiner pull two large flaps of the scalp forward and backward, which completely exposes the skull underneath. And you know, this step alone can reveal hidden injuries to the scalp that you just couldn't see from the outside.
Once the skull is exposed, a specialized saw comes into play. The cut is made with immense care, following a very specific line all the way around the head, starting just above the eyebrows and going all the way to the back. The goal here is to open the cranium as cleanly as possible, without damaging a single thing inside. And this just perfectly illustrates the level of care we're talking about. This is a direct warning from the source material. Using a mallet and chisel is an absolute no-go. And why is that? Because the force could so easily create new fractures or make existing ones worse, which would completely contaminate the evidence and make an accurate diagnosis pretty much impossible.
Okay, so once that skull cap is carefully lifted away, the investigation inside the cranial cavity begins immediately. We're talking about a meticulous, multi-layered inspection that happens before the brain is even touched.
The dissector follows a strict protocol, kind of like a pilot's checklist. First, they check for extradural hemorrhage. That's bleeding outside the brain's protective covering, called the dura. They examine the big veins for any blood clots that formed before death. Then they carefully cut open the dura to look for bleeding underneath it. And finally, they trace the major arteries at the base of the brain, like the circle of Willis, searching for any blockages or aneurysms.
And now, we've arrived at the final and most intricate part of the whole cranial exam: the careful removal, the weighing, and the detailed analysis of the brain itself. This is where so many of the crucial answers are hiding.
Getting the brain out is this incredibly delicate process that has to be done without causing any damage at all.
As you can see, it's a very precise sequence, gently lifting the front of the brain, systematically cutting all the nerves and blood vessels that are holding it in place, and all the while supporting its full weight with one hand until it can be lifted out completely. It's an art.
So even before a single cut is made into the brain, its outer surface is checked for huge clues. Are the natural folds and wrinkles, the convolutions, flattened out? That's a classic sign of swelling. Is the brain lopsided or pushed over to one side? That could point to a mass, like a tumor or a big bleed that was forcing it out of position.
Now, to see what's going on inside, the brain is methodically sliced. The best way to picture it is like slicing a loaf of bread, from the front all the way to the back. This technique, called serial coronal sectioning, lets them do a thorough, layer-by-layer examination of every single internal structure. It makes it possible to spot even tiny areas of bleeding or other damage. Now, in some situations, it's actually better to fix the brain before cutting it. This just means preserving it in a chemical solution. And the reason for it is simple. Pure science. This process firms up all the soft tissue, which stops it from getting distorted and makes any abnormalities or changes stand out way more clearly. It just leads to a more accurate diagnosis. You'd think the investigation would be over just because the brain is out, right? Not even close. The dissector goes back to the now empty cranial cavity for one last check. They'll strip away the dura lining to look for hidden skull fractures, they'll carefully remove the tiny pituitary gland to examine it, and they might even chisel into the bone to inspect the middle ears. It just shows you how incredibly thorough this process really is.
So, from the very first incision to the final slice of the brain, the internal examination is this incredible journey of meticulous, scientific discovery. Every single step is designed to uncover another piece of the puzzle, but it really leaves us with a bigger thought. Beyond just finding the cause of death, what profound questions about life, about disease, and about injury can this ultimate examination truly answer?